in the summer of 2024.
GitHub opened up what they call GitHub models that are freely accessible to anybody who has a GitHub account. Not only do they make models available for anybody to develop, but there are some interesting capabilities right there on GitHub that allow you to consume small language models, large language models, do comparisons, and so on. I wanted to talk about that. About GitHub models. Some of the things that are available, like on the left side, you see this models extension. And what that means is that when you go to GitHub and you find all these models, sometimes it's confusing. Which one shall I use? Which one is good for a specific purpose? So they created this, you could say, a directive at models. So with this at models, you can actually query the models and say, okay, what is the best model for a developer who wants to code in F# or something like that? And it will tell you what is the best model for that particular purpose. And then you can query models using a command line interface. I'll show you that. There is a playground. You can do side-by-side comparison between different models. You can enter a user prompt on two models and see what is the response coming from both models. You get to choose which is the better one that you may want to use. And they can also generate for you code samples in Python, in C#, and so on. If you want to use these models, they give you a personal access token, which is an API key. And you get to choose how long you want that API key to be valid for. You may want it to be valid for 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. And then finally, this GitHub models site, it supports what they call multi-models. And multi-models basically means that you have a model that supports maybe images, text, multiple languages, and it does multi-models. So they have a bunch of those models as well. So let us go through a demo of this GitHub AI models. So the place to start is to go to this site, github.com/marketplace/models. On this landing page, they show you these three models. But if you want, you can explore the full model catalog here. It has everything. So now you have the DeepSeek model here. So you can look at all of these and you can filter out the models on certain categories, like you might say multilingual. Which ones support multilingual? It would be these. Which one will do whatever? Let us say you choose one of these models. Let's say I'm going to choose, say, the Mistral Large, this one, for example. It tells you something about this model. You can even have this GitHub Copilot right here. You can use this GitHub Copilot even on the previous page. I think you can do that. Let's go back. Yeah, here it is. For example, in here, you're basically asking it to query all the models. At models, what is the best model for C# development? Basically, this is querying the metadata. And it says the best one is Codestral. So let's see if we can get Codestral. Codestral. You can ask it something. For example, it says it's supposed to be good at C#. So you can go to the playground here and make a query. Create for me a list of cars with properties, car type, model, make, and year in C#, for example. Okay, so it will create for you something. Supposedly, it's good at that. You can give it some code and say, what's wrong with this code? For example, here, we chose OpenAI GPT-4o, which is one of the high-end models today. We can go to the prompt editor, into the playground. This is where you get an API key. You can get a developer key here. No personal access created. You can generate a new token. I'm not going to generate one yet. And this is where you create a token. I can create a token, say, NetBC 2025. And this is where you get to decide for how long that expiry date is for. I'm going to go back to models here. Let's choose this model. And let's say parameters here. And you can, of course, enter a system prompt. Let me just do that so we can explore this. So I'm going to enter this system prompt. I'll put it in Notepad here. You're an ironic and helpful expert in music. You love everything about it, including the deep cuts. When asked about any subject, you bring it back. Like this is trying to sort of ground it. So I'm going to put that as the system prompt and ask it a question. What was the top album in 1998? It does tell you that the Titanic music from the motion picture soundtrack, that was a big hit at that time, right? And then maybe I'll ask it another question like, what was the top movie? Now, I didn't tell it that it specializes in movies, but it will remember that I'm talking about 1998. Therefore, when I say what was the top movie, it should come up and tell me, oh, the top movie were these movies in 1998. So it remembers. What is the best place to visit in 2025 that has rich history? It will probably answer that, but it will try to give it some musical character, right? Because it says destinations with rich history and musical soul. So it's still thinking about music. It gives you citation because we said here, when responding, always include a citation about your scores using a subscript citation format like this. So it actually gives you the citation because you told it when you grounded it. Let's go back and compare this with another model. So I can come here and compare it with Mistral Large, for example, this one here. So it puts it side by side. And let us say I might ask it, what is the best musical movie ever made? So notice that it's putting it in both models. So if I hit start, this one is saying Singing in the Rain, The Sound of Music. I actually agree with The Sound of Music because I think that was a very beautiful musical movie. It should be first. OpenAI is faster and seems to be more organized. La La Land, and then here it says Singing in the Rain. They seem to be agreeing on the fact that Singing in the Rain is one of the best, but they don't agree on The Sound of Music. This is all GitHub models free of charge, and you can start using it. For example, you can come here and look at the code, and it gives you the code in JavaScript, in C# to be able to consume all of this stuff. And it is comparable to what Microsoft has already done in Azure. Let's not forget, GitHub is owned by Microsoft. So the actual services are on Azure. So what you need is, you need this endpoint, and then you need also their GitHub token, which is this one here. And that GitHub token is the personal access token that I showed you how to get. And with these two, you can access this model. Okay, another thing is, there is this Ollama. If you haven't heard, Ollama is, think of it as something like a Docker kind of engine that you can download small language models and run them on your machine. It's running as a service on my machine. If you install this, the commands for running these are very much like Docker Hub. I can say Ollama list. I have these 3 models already that I downloaded. These ones are small language models. I have the Phi 3, which is 2.2 gigs. Llama 3.1 is 4.7 gigs. I can say Ollama pull, and then I can say Phi 4, for example, which I don't want to download because it's too big. But you just do a pull and it brings it. Okay, let's go here, Ollama. You go to the Ollama site, and you can come here, and here are the models on Ollama. You can download any of these. I have these models. I can do this. I can say Ollama run, and then I can run one of these, like the Phi 3. It takes you into command line interface here. So I can ask it something. I can say, how many wings does a butterfly have? And it's going to query a small language model that happens to be on my computer. And think of the opportunities here. If you have like a small language model sitting on your own device, in like an IoT device or in a fridge or something like that, you can actually use it without having to go somewhere else to download it. So if I want to exit out of here, I can say bye, and I come out of the command line interface. This Ollama command line interface, you can go into it and ask questions against your local model, Or you can actually write some scripts if you want to. For example, if you look at this command that I'm going to do here, you see I have another model called Lava 7b. So I can say Ollama run this model, and then I'm going to ask it this question, and I'll port the output to article.txt. Let me take this, paste it here. And it's going to ask the question to my local language model and then output to article.txt the answer. It takes a bit of time. Let's see if it's actually creating a text file here. Here it is. So something is happening. It finished, okay? Now here's another command line interface request that I can make. I can say to it, go to this API. You can point it to an API and say, analyze this data and tell me what's in it. So here is the command. I do a curl and make a GET request to this endpoint, and then I port it into this Ollama request. I say Ollama run this model and then analyze the API and summarize key insights. Let's say now we try this one. It's going to that endpoint, analyzing the data, and it's going to come back with some analysis. Generally speaking, you can do a lot of things with your local small language model. So it's saying there are 40 students in total. The most common school is business with a total of 16 students. The least common, blah, 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 blah. So it analyzed that data. So think about it. You can point it to any API and it will give you analysis of what's going on there. Needless to say, the AI models on GitHub, they closely mirror what's on Azure because most of that interface is already on Azure. So if you come from Azure and you're looking at GitHub, you'll probably find it very, very similar. So I'll give you an idea of how we can develop an application using C# that actually talks to these small language models that are running locally. So this is a Blazor app. So it's going to run now. And what this does is it can interpret an image. And just so that you get a sense of how it works, let me go down to some of the code. And if you look at this app development.json, I can point it to my GitHub token and it will work against the GitHub token. I can point it to a local model. In this case, it's Lava 7b. And there's another thing here. If I say AI host local, the way this app is set up is if you set it to GitHub, it will go to GitHub. If you set it to Azure, it will go to Azure. If you set it to Azure OpenAI, it will go to OpenAI. If you set it to local, it will go against this local small language model. So at the moment, it's going to go against my small language model using this Lava 7b. The reason I chose Lava 7b is because this particular model is good at analyzing images. This is running now. Let me ask it to say, describe the image. And then I can come here and load an image. It's in wroot. So I'm going to show this astronaut's image. Send with image. So it's going to send it to the local language model. By the way, this really slows down your computer a little bit as it is analyzing the image. But it's going to come back. Here it is. The image shows an astronaut and a person posing together for the camera. Astronaut is dressed in a space suit and blah, blah, blah. So it analyzed the image. Let's look at some code, some C# code here. And I have this GitHub Copilot chat here. It's an extension that I have. Notice one thing. They actually now allow you to choose the model that you want in your GitHub chat. There is Claude 3.5 Sonnet. This is new, but the default is GPT-4o. But there are a bunch of previews they are adding. It's going to grow as well. So anyways, here you get different models that you can choose. Another extension that I want to show you, in addition to, like, if you look at what I have here, I have GitHub Copilot Chat, I have GitHub Actions, but there's another one called AI Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. If you look at this one, I added this extension, and here it is. I can load it. Here are things that you can actually do. What this is it's a window into AI models on GitHub. So if I click on models here, it's actually showing me all the models on GitHub. And you can also play around with them here. You can try the playground here. So they've given you the experience that we saw on GitHub. They've given it to you inside of VS Code.
Thank you and see you in the next video.